Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to take another look at our memory demo, which is also part of our fundamentals demo, or the fundamentals of the Java programming language. And specifically in this video, we are going to take a look at how to pass an array list to a function. Now, in earlier videos, we took a look at how to pass an integer, a string, and an array, and some of the pros and cons to each of those data types. In other words, basically how we would handle then updating an integer inside of a function, a string inside of a function, and ultimately an array inside of a function. Now, in this video, we're going to take another look at how to update, in this case, an array list inside of a function. And again, this is part of a larger series of videos that focuses on some of the nuances of the Java programming language, how it handles not only memory, but also how it handles passing variables to functions. So to begin with, let's go ahead and take a look at our function signature. And I'll try to leave it in the comment section for this particular video, but if not, just take a second to pause the video and to go ahead and get started with your function signature here. You'll notice that right off the bat, I'm accepting an array list of strings that I'm going to call inputs, and I am accepting, or rather returning, no value. Hence, you see the void in front of my function name. Also notice that this is a public static, which means that it does not require an instance of my memory demo. Now, what we want to do is we'll want to make some assumptions here. We would want to do some validation. In other words, make sure that our array list was in fact not equal to null. I'm going to be rather naive in this particular example. In other words, I'm just going to jump straight in and I'm going to attempt to start adding elements to our array list of, our inputs array list of strings. And to make this one a little more realistic, I'm going to go ahead and throw in one other element here, and that I'm going to go ahead and create a java.util.scanner. And the idea here is that I want to be able to interactively work with the user to collect names from the console. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and have a new scanner, and the source will be our system.in. And then we probably also want to have a string, and that is just simply going to be the input from the user. You could go ahead and specify that it is a username. Doesn't really matter. This is just supposed to be more of a generic example. And I want to collect the information from the user basically until they're done, they're fed up with using the application. In other words, they enter in some magic keyword, but I want it to run at least once. And so to do that, then what we will have is going to be our do while loop, and our while condition is going to be while our input equals ignore case, and we're just going to make the magic word exit. And so while this is in fact equal to false, well, we want to simply add new information to our array list. And to accomplish this, we want to have a nice little friendly message to our user, telling them what to do. Please enter a name, followed by our input equal to scanner. And again, we're going to keep this one pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead and grab everything up to the next line. In other words, when the user hits the enter, and probably want to update our prompt to say, or exit to quit. Again, it's a good idea, no matter how simple the application is, to give the user some information as to how to use the application. Now, here, what we want to do is we want to check to see if our input equals ignore case done, or rather exit equal to false. Well, we simply want to add this then to our inputs. So inputs dot add, and input. Now, again, you can probably see there's going to be a lot of optimization we can do here. We could actually leverage a break in this particular example. I'm going to go ahead and refactor this particular one here. I did not mean to switch capitalization on us. I'm going to go ahead and refactor this here. And again, we have a little bit of redundancy in here. That's not really the point. The idea here is, though, that we simply want this to run at least once and collect information from the command line. Now, let's go back up to our main, and we'll go ahead and use our demo switch as a template to drive this particular one. And what we'll do is we'll add it here, and we'll simply change our switch name to update string array list. And then again, what we want to do is we want to have a locally defined variable here of an array list of strings. I'm going to just simply keep with my theme here of calling it inputs, and I'm going to go ahead and specify that it is a new array list of strings. And what we want to do is we simply want to have a system.out.println. We're going to keep this one pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We're not going to loop through all of the elements in the array list. All I want to do is I want to see what the count for the array list is. And to accomplish this, then I'm just going to look at the size. And I want to do this before and after calling my function. So if anything, let's have a before here and an after. And again, remember that our function does not have any output variable or output value. So when we make our call to our update string array list function passing our inputs, well, whatever happens inside the function then has to be done to our inputs array list. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. Let's go ahead and build it. Let's go ahead and come over to our command window. I'm going to clear a window here, and we'll change this now to our update string array list demo. And you can see here that beforehand, I have a count of 0, and it's saying, please enter a name or exit to quit. So I'm just going to test our logic before we go any further here. Exit will, in fact, return control back to the calling function, in this case, main. So everything looks fine so far. So now what I want to do is I want to actually enter in a name here, Gregory, Robert, Jim, and then so on, and then type in exit, and you'll see that my count afterwards is now 3. Now, I think you can guess that if I were to put a for loop in here, which we can, and there's a couple of different ways that we can go about doing this. We're going to go ahead and just simply use our index variable that we already have on hand. So for index equals 0, index less than our inputs dot size, and then index plus plus. Well, what we can do then is we can just do a system.out.println. And I'm going to prepend a couple of spaces here, and I'm going to simply leverage then our inputs. And you'll notice that there is a get function that allows for me to get the particular index. I'm not going to bother with the toString because I already know that I'm dealing with a string. But again, if we build this and we rerun this one more time, really haven't changed the functionality much. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into adding names here, Robert, Jim, and then finally our exit. As you can see, there are our 3 names. Now, this should be a little bit surprising to you because, well, in an earlier video, we saw that if we passed a variable, well, we couldn't really make any changes to the variable inside a function that would be then seen outside the calling function. But remember that when we were looking at our array example in an earlier video, we saw that as long as we didn't actually change the array itself, but rather just the elements in the array, well, we could in fact make some changes to the array. A similar thing is going on here in that what we're doing is we're essentially passing the array list to a function, and the array list, a copy, if you would, pointing to that array list then is made, but the individual elements then can be updated or in fact added to, which is fundamentally what's going on here. Now, I will go ahead and show you how we can break this, and that's actually pretty easy to do in that I can simply come back in here into our update string array list, and I could specify that I want to create a new array list of strings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the constructor here, and I'm going to see real quick if this particular example works by building it. And coming back out here to our command window, I'm going to rerun this one more time. I'm going to put in a couple of names here. And then finally, I'm going to put in our exit. But notice here that afterwards, I still have 0 elements in the array. And that is because effectively what I've done is I've broken the connection between the array list that was outside in the main and the array list by calling the constructor that was created inside of the helper function. So essentially what I've done is I've lost access to that other array list that was in main, and therefore if I tried to add anything to it, well, it simply added it to this array list that was local and then got destroyed after the function returned control back to the main. Now again, if this helps you to think of this a little bit like passing then the address of the array list to the function, and then effectively what's happening is the address of the array list is passed and it's stored in another variable. And so as long as you don't change the address of the array list by calling the constructor, well, you can still access the individual elements inside of the inputs array list. So we'll get an opportunity to see another example of this and work with this in later videos. But the key thing to note here is as long as you have a non-null array list, in other words, that you don't actually have to create the array list inside of the helper function, and that you have a valid array list, you can in fact update it. You'll also note that rather than creating a new array list, what you probably would want to do, assuming that again, this is in fact not null, is that you can in fact clear all of the elements in an existing array list, which essentially does the same thing, if you think about it, as creating a new one, and that it simply removes all of the existing entities. So removes all of the existing strings. However, it does not reset the memory location for the inputs array list. So this is probably going to be the way that you're going to want to interact with an array list in the future. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.